Welcome back to the Run into Traffic edition of the Bill and Doug Show. We're talking playoff brackets and Landis. I'm not even sure I want to do it. What was your idea for this show? Like, is the Big Ten going to get a single team into the playoff? Just one team, one bid league?
Two bid league, not quite that bad. Two bid league. Yeah, I think like 1 to 10 scale. I'm not like at a 9 that it's going to be like that, but just looking at some stuff, getting a little worried about what exactly the balance is going to be between the Big Ten and the SEC.
So let's take the audience out to the ledge, and then I actually went through some stuff, and I think I can bring us back from the ledge slightly. Let's walk and listen. This is not Heather Dinich takes a lot of heat at ESPN because A, she works for ESPN. And B, she is like the face of their playoff coverage at ESPN. And so do you and I think at times that ESPN can have a lean towards the SEC because ESPN has an agreement with the SEC? Do we think that at times? I think we do.
Yeah, that's part of what has fueled this fear for me, because I was looking at ESPN's playoff predictor, which I shouldn't have done. Don't look at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I don't like Heather Dinich is not doing things because they have an association with the SEC. So I looked at her thing. She does like a bubble, like a playoff. She does a version of this every week, right? Mm-hmm. So hers right now. So I think she is just like in many ways reflecting some degree of consensus, some degree of this is where teams are now. This is what their records are now. If the playoffs started today, this is who would be in. And her playoff right now, of course, there's one from the group of 5. So the 11 other spots, she has 6 SEC, 3 Big Ten, and 1 each from the ACC and the Big 12.
Yeah. That doesn't scare you?
No, I'm scared. I'm scared shirtless, but Doug got so scared he took off his shirt and everyone turned off their YouTube channel. But what did the playoff predictor say? I didn't look at that.
So it's not the playoff predictor is not like here's the field. It's just like percentages to make the playoff.
Yeah.
And there were 16 teams that had 30% chance or better. And of those 16, 9 are in the SEC and only 4 are in the Big Ten. The top 2 are in the Big Ten. Ohio State and Oregon are the only 2 with 80%, or almost 90%. Ohio State's 89%, Oregon's 87%. And then Indiana's 5th, and then he goes all the way down to 13th until you get another Big Ten team.
So I do think the way the consensus is shaping up right now with Penn State falling off the map is that middle of the SEC is momentarily, and we'll have to see if it's long-term, but momentarily getting more playoff consideration, playoff talk, playoff respect than the middle of the Big Ten, where like Maryland is 4-1 and Washington only has 1 loss. And there's not a predictor. There's not a mathematical formula. There's not a human being, right? Like we understand, like no one's like, hey, I don't know, Texas A&M, Maryland, I think they have equal playoff chances. That's not what we're asking for. It's not what we expect.
Hey man, Maryland's like top 5 in stop rate. All right.
Tell you what, Maryland like had Washington on the ropes and let them off. Like if we want to talk about 5-0 Maryland, we could talk about 5-0 Maryland, but they're 4-1 Maryland because they gave it up to the Huskies. So like you don't, now they also, I think they're like literally last in the nation in rushing yards or something. So I think, anyway, we're not trying to be unrealistic. We don't want to be naive, but I do think there is something temporary before all these SEC teams start playing each other and beating each other, that right now they look glossier than similar Big Ten teams. And I'm not so sure they don't deserve to look glossier, or even if they don't deserve it, I get it. I'm not going to get it as much in November, but I kind of understand where things are now. And I'm not assuming that is a reflection of where the playoff will be 2 months from now.
Yeah, I think that's probably the right way to view it. And the way that the schedule has broken out, it's just like there have been more like big SEC games, I think, than there have been big Big Ten games so far, right? Like I guess the Big Ten's probably had, I'm talking like actual conference games, like 3. And and the SEC's probably had more like 5 or 6. At least in the way that they get talked about, and like the AP poll impacts that too. So I don't think it's off base either. I'm just wondering about like how much longer it might linger, and as we've discussed many times before, will these games in the SEC actually start eliminating teams, or just bolster the argument that the league is so good that it deserves 6 or 7 teams? Because like 7 actually feels like a reality, and I don't want to live in that reality. I'm not saying like you look at the Big Ten and say the Big Ten absolutely has 6 playoff worthy teams. How could this possibly be the case that the SEC is getting projected to have 6 or 7? But I don't like the imbalance. And I'm just getting a little nervous about like what might happen should this like Oregon Indiana game go a certain way, and Penn State like truly never gets back up off the mat, and USC and Michigan aren't quite playoff worthy, and then you're staring at the 2 Big Ten team in the playoff. I think in a actually like a very realistic way.
Okay. So I have some scenarios, because I think we have to like try to game out. For instance, when we did our playoff picks last week, I had Indiana at a certain spot, and I had Oregon at a certain spot, and I had Penn State at a certain spot. And you were like, well, does that mean this, or does that mean that? And I was like, actually, I don't know. I don't know what any of it means, because I actually didn't like go through and figure things out. So now I've done that. I tried to game out the Big Ten season. So we'll get to that in a second. But first, we just want to remind people, not a bad time to go check out rowback.com. We know several of you have, many of you have already, and we're certainly grateful for that. We think it's a good place for you to go, like, refresh your Ohio State wardrobe. We're getting to that time of year, like early October, almost mid-October. Hoodies, quarter zips, sweatshirts, like you can still get some of the short sleeve stuff, but rowback.com, RHOBACK.com. Go check it out for your Ohio State gear, kind of like next level gear. We're going to give you a code, BAD20, BAD20. Put that in. It gets you 20% off your first order. So, Bill, isn't it? It's like it's time. We don't want it to get too late. Not that there's ever a bad time, but if it's like it's week 10 and you're like, oh man, I didn't order my stuff yet. You kind of want to order it now for the fall at rowback.com.
It's been funny to me because you get these partnerships, and they send you some language that you can use or choose not to use. And for this one, it starts with fall is here, and like for the entire time, it's been like 85 degrees.
I know,
but it's finally getting down to the 60s this week, and hopefully moving forward. So yeah, perfect time to restock your hoodie collection.
Yeah. Tank top season is here, just in time for college football. It's not what really we should be doing. So there are ways, I think, Bill, the thing that would make the Big Ten most nervous at this point is the assumption, and I think the correct assumption, based on how they've played so far, and then like you try to project Ohio State and Oregon going forward, and like, again, I'm not sure anybody called Penn State losing to UCLA, but we don't see that happening. So then beyond those two, it's the collection of like if everybody beats everybody and there's a couple random losses. And I divided the Big Ten into 2 categories. But the main issue is the next UCLA over Penn State type of game, that all of a sudden Michigan's losing to Purdue, or I don't even know if they play each other, or Illinois is losing to Northwestern, or like those are the ones. That's what would really screw up the Big Ten. And again, that's what screwed up the SEC last year. Ole Miss losing to Kentucky, right? That you beat each other up, but it's the UCLA over Penn State loss is devastating. A few more of those is when the Big Ten could really be in playoff trouble.
Yeah, it's on one hand like a sign of strength, I guess, for the league that the bottom is able to rise up and beat the middle sometimes, but you don't really want that to happen when you're in the business of getting as many teams as possible into the playoff. I don't know that I'm like terribly fearful of that.
Okay.
I think the
That's
UCLA
a good
thing
starting point. That's good to hear you say that.
Yeah, I think the UCLA thing was a bit of a dead cat bounce thing against a vulnerable team. I don't know. Although I say that, did you see that the Illinois beat Purdue, but it was one of those upside down success rate games?
It was
actually by like like a fairly decent margin for Purdue being better than Illinois. So maybe I shouldn't say that as confidently as I did, but that is not part of my math here when being a little worried about what might happen with the Big Ten.
Okay. So if that's not the primary fear, then I think let me talk us all off that ledge with some of like, okay, if stuff just happens how you sort of expect it to go. I divided the Big Ten into like the teams that are still have a playoff chance and the ones that don't. So this is primarily it's the 3 undefeated teams: Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana. It is the 6 one-loss teams: Michigan, Illinois, USC, Washington, Nebraska, and Maryland. And then Penn State at 3-2. Because frankly, with Ohio State and Indiana still on the schedule, if Penn State wins out, they're in, no doubt about it.
10-2 Penn State is in. Yes.
Yeah. Like 10-2 Penn State's like the 6th seed. So, I wrote about Ohio State and Penn State on Substack on Tuesday. We're going to continue to talk about this. This is an important story for Penn State and the Big Ten and Northern College football. I'm not going to come on here and be like, oh wait, don't bury Penn State yet. But on the other hand, they still have good players. Given what has happened, are they going to come into Columbus and win? I would certainly doubt it. But they still have good players. 10-2, they're definitely in. 9-3, we can get into in a second. So I still included them, right? So if you do the 3 undefeated teams, the 6 one-loss teams in Penn State, that's the top 10. Then if you do the other 8 that are like they're already out of the playoff race. No offense. The 2-loss teams of Minnesota, Rutgers, Michigan State, and Northwestern, like I just don't think it's gonna, and Iowa. I just don't think it's gonna happen. Surprise us 10-2, great. And then Wisconsin and Purdue with 3 losses and UCLA with 4. So those 8 are out, right? So I looked at all the games between the top 10. And then for these purposes, assume that everybody in the top 10 is going to beat everybody in the bottom 8 when they play each other. Now, like Minnesota's in the bottom 8. Minnesota still has to play Nebraska. Minnesota can jump up and get somebody, right? Like
sure.
That. Minnesota's barely in the bottom. I don't know. Like Purdue, if you said they have a better success rate against Illinois, could Purdue jump up and get somebody? Could Michigan State, Nathan Childs jump up and get somebody? We understand, like, we're not being dismissive of that fact, but this is an exercise. So then I went through those 17 games, Bill. Do you want me to read those 17 games, or can we just kind of figure it out? We understand what they are.
Yeah, we can. I think we understand what they are. Yeah.
Okay. So like Michigan USC this weekend is a huge one for this, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like Maryland Nebraska is one of the 17 this weekend, kind of like a big deal. So I then went through those 17 games and basically just picked who I think the favorite's going to be in that game to win. So some of them are toss-ups. Some of them, like this week, USC is the favorite over Michigan, because USC's at home. Like, I don't know if I necessarily believe that. I don't know if I'm going to pick USC to beat Michigan, but for now, I gave that game to USC. So I did that, and then these are the records that I came up with, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You get Ohio State and Oregon at 12-0. You get Indiana at 11-1, because now, even though they're going to Happy Valley, I'm now under the impression that I think Indiana is going to beat Penn State. Maybe Penn State will be favored in that game, but for operating purposes, can we call that a Hoosiers victory until we're told otherwise?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay. So now we're talking about 11-1 Indiana with its only loss to Oregon this weekend. And we're certainly going to end up talking a lot about Indiana, Oregon on our National College Pick Show on Friday. But if we have 11-1 Indiana, 11-1 Indiana is 1,000% a playoff team, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Then we have at 10-2, with the way I did it, Illinois and Nebraska. So this is, for instance, me giving Illinois a win at Washington, which again, I guess maybe Washington will be favored in that game, but I just think like Illinois can win that. Maryland, I gave Illinois that win. This is Illinois losing to Ohio State this weekend and then running the table and going 10-2. And then Nebraska at 10-2, which this is Nebraska Losing to Penn State, which I actually think they have a chance to win that game, but that would just be their second loss. All their other games are very winnable. And so then you're looking at 10-2 Nebraska that's lost to Michigan and Penn State. And then this is Michigan at 9-3, USC and Washington, and Penn State at 8-4, and Maryland at 7-5. I'm not predicting that, but I'm just trying to do the exercise, Bill. If everybody else handles their business against Northwestern and UCLA and all the teams like that, this is what we would be looking at. And in this scenario, Ohio State and Oregon at 12-0 and Indiana at 11-1 are definitely in. And I think Illinois and Nebraska at 10-2 would have a shot. Does this scenario make you feel any better or still make you feel like you did before?
I guess slightly better. I would disagree on Illinois. I don't think, because Illinois has a incredibly lopsided loss. Yeah, I don't know that you can lose by 50 and get a playoff spot if you're not 11-1.
So like the thing is, right, like, so in this scenario, it's 10-2 Illinois with losses to playoff teams, with losses to like the number 1 seed and the number 7 seed.
Yeah.
But what's their best win? Is their best win at Washington? Does Duke come on and have a good season and the Duke win on the road looks really good? But you are correct. It is quite a thing to overcome.
Yeah, unless like they lose to Ohio State and it's close, right? That would certainly help. But
like, do you believe and we're not doing this right this second, but I believe that is pretty important to the Big Ten this weekend if Illinois can be competitive with Ohio State. How Illinois loses to Ohio State, I think, affects the Big Ten's playoff chances.
I agree. Yeah. It doesn't affect Ohio State's playoff chances or Oregon's, but it affects everything beyond that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what do you think about 10-2 Nebraska?
Yeah, 10-2 Nebraska, I kind of had my eye on coming into the season.
Okay.
And I think I can't remember preseason. Did one of us have Nebraska in? I know people were putting Nebraska in their playoff field preseason because the schedule could just kind of get you there.
Yeah.
And I don't know that anything's happened for Nebraska so far this year that would make you deviate from that possibility too much. So I think 10-2 is possible. And if it were 10-2, because the Michigan loss was not like, it wasn't like they got blown out against Michigan. So, yeah, that actually a 10-2 Nebraska feels more solid to me than a 10-2 Illinois would, just because the Indiana loss for Illinois was so lopsided.
And then the other part of this is, I have Michigan at 9-3 with a loss to USC that actually I don't think is going to happen. So then if we're talking about 10-2 Michigan, and its 2 losses are to 2 playoff teams in Oklahoma and Ohio State. And again, Michigan might beat Ohio State, but for this exercise, Ohio State is going to be favored in that game. I'm giving that game to Ohio State. What would you think of 10-2 Michigan if Oklahoma is a playoff team?
Yeah, I think they would have a pretty strong case. I think like this Michigan USC game is maybe the most important Big Ten game to date. Because what it can mean for that winner. I think whoever comes out of that game has a shot to get to the playoff, like a pretty strong chance to get to the playoff.
So the bottom line of this is, if we wind up with 2 undefeated teams and an 11-1 team, and there's 3 Big Ten teams in, and then we think there will be an option or 2 at 10-2. Is that a pretty good outcome for the Big Ten?
Yes. If there are multiple 10-2 teams, yeah, because you're talking about potentially five or so double-digit win teams. I feel very good about that. I'm just worried about the 2 double-digit win teams.
Yes,
and like a 10-2 Indiana that I'm not sure would get in, and then a bunch of 9-win teams.
And the other thing that is difficult about this that I think the SEC does not have to worry about this year is Ohio State and Oregon are both so good. It is more difficult to imagine them losing to anybody else. But if any of the prospective 10-2 or 9-3 Big Ten teams had a win over Oregon or Ohio State, that's rocket fuel. If Washington's 9-3 with the win over Oregon in the last game of the year, or Washington's 10-2 with the win over Oregon in the last game of the year, like, they're in.
Yeah.
9-3 Washington with that win, I think, would have a real chance. And 10-2 Washington with a win over Oregon, I think, is in. No doubt about it.
I would agree
but
with that. Yeah.
This is where you get to the point where is having two dominant teams actually bad for the league, because that's 18 guaranteed losses for everybody else if Ohio State and Oregon steamroll. It is quite a thing that you would say, hey, guess what? The SEC does not have teams like Ohio State or Oregon. And the result is 7 SEC, 3 Big Ten. Or 2 Big Ten. We have the two best teams in the country, or 2 of the 3 best teams in the country are from the Big Ten. So nobody else in the Big Ten gets in, and everybody from this mid-conference, we're taking half the league. Bill.
That's what seems like a flawed playoff system. If that were the case. But I don't know. What do you think? Like if you injected Tony Petitti with truth serum and said, what's better for the league? Having 5 teams with playoff bids, or having 2 of the 3 strongest national championship contenders? Like, well, and you had to choose one, what do you think you would want? Because I think you would probably want the. Well, yeah. Do you think you don't want?
I think he'd want the 5. I think he'd take 5.
Yeah.
I think he'd want the depth.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know. Like Ohio State fans don't care. Ohio State fans are like, what do you mean? We're going to win the national championship? If we can be the only Big Ten team in the field. But I think you're probably right. I think he probably would take the 5.
Unless you could guarantee that Ohio State and Oregon were on opposite brackets, and the story of the playoff becomes, hey, congrats to the mid SEC on getting teams in. They just were cannon fodder for these 2 Big Ten monsters that are destined to meet for the national title in a 14-0 versus 14-0. Well, no, because somebody's going to have a loss, because they would have played each other in the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah.
So it's 15-0 against 14-1 for the national title between 2 Big Ten teams. If you got that, like, that's what you're talking about. So would you think that is preferable to 5?
Yeah, if you could guarantee it, if you can guarantee an all Big Ten national championship game, I think that would be preferable to 5. Yeah.
But if you get a spot where it's like the Big Ten champ's the 1 seed, and the Big Ten championship game loser is the 4 seed, and all that means is they're going to play each other in a semifinal for the right to play Miami or some mid SEC team in the national championship game. I'm not sure that's as appetizing, but that's hard. And this is back to this conversation again. The SEC used to be top heavy. The Big Ten had depth, and that was what everybody wanted. And now it's flip flopped. And the SEC does not have teams like Ohio State and Oregon, but the result is nobody knows who's good. So I guess we'll just put 6 or 7 in. And does this make, so it's like, oh, well, no wonder the Big Ten's pushing for 4 guaranteed spots, because we're talking about what if they wind up with 2, but beyond personal agendas, beyond doing what's best for you, does a discussion like this make automatic bids better for people? Because if you wind up rewarding a team that doesn't have as much strength as at the top, and the result is they get in more in the middle, is there a little bit of that's wrong? And even if it was reversed, we'd be okay. Like Bama and Georgia are great, and the SEC has the 2 best teams, but the Big Ten has a bunch of other teams. Should the Big Ten get in 6 and the SEC get in 2? This, to me, starts to get to the nut. If you could get away from you're just doing what serves you, it gets to the nut of like why the automatic bids might make sense, because you're just putting forth the best you've got, rather than trying to stumble into rewarding mediocrity with 6 bids.
It helps me understand the argument better. Like it doesn't fully put me on the side of it, I don't think. Because I still think people are trying to make determinations with too small of a data set. Like we have 1 year of this, and we're hypothetically talking about year 2. Who knows what the third year it might bring. And I'd be lying if I said like this doesn't feel like the direction it's headed, right? Like where we end up kind of rewarding a league for being mediocre is probably not the right word, but like for its parity, when I'm not really sure that's the point. So I get why that would drive anyone to want the AQs. I'm I'm still not a huge fan of the idea, but it is starting to like make a little bit more sense to me why that would be the case.
Yeah. This Indiana-Oregon game is obviously fascinating, but like as much as we said, okay, Indiana, who did they play last year other than Ohio State? Well, this year they're going to play Oregon and Penn State both on the road. And now it's like, oh, wait, is Penn State not who we thought? 5-0 Indiana, remaining schedule at Oregon, home Michigan State, home UCLA, at Maryland, at Penn State, home Wisconsin, at Purdue. I mean, that is 4 games versus that bottom part of the conference. And then like, honestly, is like Maryland really at that level? Like that is like 5 eminently winnable games, man. 5 eminently winnable games. And then it depends how wounded Penn State is, but it's like somehow
they get Penn State too after Penn State plays Ohio State. Like who knows what kind of
beaten up, right.
mode Penn State will be in. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, either way for Indiana, if Penn State somehow just saved its program by winning at Ohio State, Curt Cignetti would like relish that. Like, oh, now they're flying high. Let's go in and cut their legs out. Or if they're wounded and that was loss number 3 and like they're kind of dead, then Curt Cignetti is going to want to go in and finish them off. Like either way.
You almost don't trust Penn State either way, right? Because they just handled a close loss terribly. And it's like they're going to handle beating Ohio State well. There's no way that would happen.
And like that scenario, like James Franklin's kind of also done that in his career, kind of let a loss turn into another loss. Like they don't necessarily rebound from things right away. But here we are with this scenario, Bill, where somehow like Penn State's not quite what you think. And now all of a sudden we're back in a scenario where could Indiana, like if Indiana though doesn't beat Penn State's still decent. It's still in Happy Valley. That's a tough place to play. So they lose to Oregon, they lose to Penn State, but they're really good otherwise. They might be like definitively the 3rd best team in the Big Ten. They just happen to have to play Penn State on the road. And like, but 10-2 is not persuasive.
I think it could be. It just depends on what the 2 losses look like, right? It can't look like it looked. If you have 2 losses that look like Indiana's lost to Ohio State last year, then no, I don't think it is persuasive.
Okay.
But if they're competitive, even in a loss, I do think that would matter.
Yeah. Okay. It is quite a thing. It's just like you really, in the end, you're better off like beating Georgia and losing to Kentucky than you are beating Kentucky and losing to Georgia. Like, I think like even though that was the resume that didn't get Ole Miss in last year, but like that was at 9-3. So like, I don't know. I do think again, it's an interesting discussion because I do think just the profiles of the SEC and the Big Ten are just different enough right now that it makes these discussions matter. And it's not just a discussion about now. It's a discussion about what college football wants to be, what college football wants to reward, how the people on the committee or the powers that be that determine the playoff system want to think about the sport. And I do think that overall discussion, what we're having today is a reflection of the reality of the structure they set up, of the system they set up. So then we're talking about it within that system. But if we get to the point, do you root sometimes for things to be so broken that you have to change it?
I understand the sentiment. Yeah.
Because I actually I don't think the 12-team playoff is broken. I thought by the end the 14 playoff is broken. But I don't think this is broken.
No.
But if you are a person who wants expansion, if you are a person who wants AQ, automatic qualifiers, a college football playoff that is 1 Big 12, 1 ACC, 2 Big 10, and 7 SEC, that's a shattered system.
A bunch of 9-win SEC teams. Yeah. I would say so. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think that's the point of setting this up. Because I don't, not to say that some of those 7, like clearly some of those, if it is like literally 7 9-win SEC teams, some of those teams would be deserving, but I don't think all of them would be. Some of them would just be in there like on the benefit of their scale, like not dissimilar from Indiana, I guess, last year. But I think like some point along the way, you would need to like show yourself as being like the quality of a playoff team, and I think we all know what that looks like. And I don't know that I believe that all 7 of those teams would do that en route to a 9-3.
Yeah. So we're just sitting here like the idea of that 10-2 Illinois team, Indiana at 10-2, Nebraska at 10-2, Michigan at 10-2. There's none of those teams that were like, oh, they're in for sure. Is that true? Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Nebraska at 10-2. None of those, if they go as we expect, the 10-2 that would be the most likely, which is like lose to the best teams you play, beat everybody else. We don't think any of those teams are guaranteed in, right?
No.
Okay. Whereas we would expect probably in this mishmash some 9-3 SEC teams in there, and that's where because the perception would be, and I just said it, but the idea of those 10-2 Big Ten teams is like, well, they lost to the only good teams they played, and then they just beat everybody else. But then we're assuming that Washington's not good, or that Minnesota's not good, or that these other teams that the middle of the Big Ten that we've said is the deepest it's ever been. You're operating under the assumption that the middle of the Big Ten is not very good, but the middle of the SEC is. When actually it might be that the top of the Big Ten is better than the SEC, and the middles are just as good. Or maybe the middle of the SEC is a little better, but not that different. But really what's separating you is that maybe a couple of your teams beat Alabama or Texas. Florida beat Texas. So then if Florida's in a playoff race, if Florida's 9-3, Florida's going to 9-3 Florida. They're not going to be 9-3. 9-3 Florida, though, would have a better chance at the playoff probably than 10-2 Nebraska. Because Florida beat Texas. But when Nebraska played Michigan, like Michigan might be better than Texas. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of thing that there still, I think, are baked in assumptions about the SEC that might show themselves in scenarios like this.
A way to eliminate some of those assumptions would just be to have a Big Ten SEC challenge.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
How good would that be?
Be great.
Do you think it'll ever happen?
Yes, I do.
TV.
Yeah. Too much money to be made. Yeah.
It will. The 12-team playoff, I think we were saying it before it happened. I think we were saying people do not realize how good this is going to be. From an excitement standpoint, from an interest standpoint, from a viewership standpoint, from a financial standpoint. Do you believe the 12-team playoff lived up to the expectations?
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. Yeah.
Okay. I think an SEC Big Ten challenge, although very different, could have a similar effect on the beginning of the college football season. That we would never view September college football the same way again.
No, it'd be pretty gigantic. Yeah, like just think of what it was to get that Ohio State Texas game, but now like multiply it by whatever 8 or 10, however many of those games we get. It would be incredible for the sport, and also I think, like I said, like help erase. Teams can evolve over time. I'm not trying to be dismissive of that. What you are in September is not necessarily what you are in November, but at least we'd have like some extra data to consider when trying to figure out, is the middle of the Big Ten better than the middle of the SEC, or like how much better is the SEC than the Big Ten in the middle, that kind of stuff. So it would be helpful and also entertaining.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think your choices are in trying to figure this out. And we've been talking about this since the beginning of the season. If you just get a big mishmash at 9-3 and you have 11 9-3 teams and 4 get in, and it's almost impossible to choose between them, but you just have to choose 4, and you can't take all 11 because the numbers say you can't. To me, like, it's not that the committee would get it wrong, is that there's potentially no right answer. So then I think the best way to handle that either is to take away the subjectivity and make it objective with AQs, or to add data points, to add incredibly valuable data points. And something like this would do that. If you don't want to get to AQ, then let's let them fight it out in the non-conference a little bit more to help inform it. So, and it's not necessarily like, the Big Ten won the Big Ten SEC challenge 10-6. So the Big Ten gets one more playoff bid. Like, it's not that, but it is data points. So, okay. You want to do playoff picks?
Let's do it.
So I hate my bracket slightly less than I hated it before.
Okay.
But I also might hate one of my things anyway. Okay. We did not have a large conversation about this, but I'll go first, and I'll tell you the thing that's happening here. Number 1, Ohio State, unchanged. Number 2, Miami, unchanged. Number 3, Oregon, unchanged. Number 4, Texas A&M, the SEC champ, unchanged. Number 5, Ole Miss, moved them up a little bit, I think, from last week.
Yeah,
I did move them up a little bit. Number 6, Oklahoma. Number 7, Texas Tech. Number 8, Indiana, which is where I sort of settled on Indiana. I had them 5 last week, but kind of nonsensically. So 8, Indiana. 9, Georgia Tech. 10, Notre Dame. 11, Illinois. 12, South Florida. So this is Texas out for me. I have Oklahoma in instead. This is Penn State out. I have Illinois in instead. And this is Missouri out. I have Notre Dame in instead. So this is me, again, maybe a little wishful thinking with just 3 SEC. But, like, I don't know. Maybe people can realize that it is a collection of mid, and this is like a 10-2 Illinois team that competes pretty substantially with Ohio State this week, getting in as the 4th Big Ten team. So before you unveil yours, what do you hate most about mine?
I don't know that I hate a ton of it. I can't get there on Notre Dame just yet.
Okay.
I think, like, to this point, Notre Dame has done what it needs to do. But I just don't know that schedule is going to help them much. They're big Michigan fans this week. they're gonna need that, I think. Or sorry, big USC fans.
They're big USC fans. Yeah, they're rooting. I mean, it comes naturally for Notre Dame fans to root against Michigan because Notre Dame plays USC and they want USC to be viewed as highly as possible. The one thing that could work in their favor is like the reverse schedule thing of, again, like you and I, if Miami and Texas A&M are 2 of the 4 best teams in the country and Notre Dame played them both down to the wire and then just handles business, as we remember that more and more teams are going to lose, that's the thing that, like, the schedule plays in their favor. Is that it turns out Miami and Texas A&M are both just awesome. And Miami on the road, that was a tough loss, and they probably should have beaten Texas A&M. I mean, like, if you want to go through, I don't know, again, it's like not a thing that you're supposed to really talk about, but Texas A&M's game-winning touchdown pass, there should have been a hold called on the play. Like, no doubt about it. It should have been a hold called. So that doesn't mean you don't turn that into a Notre Dame win. But if you're looking at the SEC champs, if Notre Dame is 10-2 and its 2 losses are to the ACC champ and the SEC champ, both close, I don't know how good the rest of their schedule has to be if they win all the rest and they look good while they're doing it, which I think they're in the process of doing.
That's a fair point, I think. And I will say we had the conversation, like, is Notre Dame dead in the playoff conversation after the A&M loss? And I think probably being a little too much prisoner of the moment. I believe I said yes, and I think you might have said, like, probably. I don't think it's like that written in stone, right? Like, with time, I would back off of that a little bit, but I think they maybe almost need Miami and Texas A&M to be their conference champions for that to be the case.
They're rooting like crazy for that. Yeah. I think you're right.
I don't know, but that also, especially in Miami's case, that seems likely to happen. And I still have A&M as my SEC champ as well. So it's on the table. It's not impossible.
Because I think one of the things, if we thought they were dead in the moment, is like we didn't think Texas A&M was going to win the SEC. Yeah. But if that night Notre Dame had lost to Georgia on the last play of the game, and it's like, oh, they've lost to Miami and Georgia, I think we might have been like, well, I don't know. Like, a lot of teams are going to lose to Miami and Georgia. I think they can get in, right? So, like, that's what it is now. So if you just think of that's like the best team in the SEC. So I'm very curious how that unfolds, but I do think either Miami or Texas A&M sort of falling apart here would be devastating to Notre Dame, potentially.
Yes.
Potentially devastating. Yeah. So they really need that. Okay. So I feel a little better about where things are and the idea of like an 11-1 Indiana being like whatever, like a nice 7 or 8 or 9 seed, like comfortably in, but still not like the 5 seed or whatever. I think is very possible. Then it's just a reminder again of like, we're going to get into discussions about 2 lost teams. And like when you have Penn State losing to UCLA, you already mentioned that Illinois losing by 50 to Indiana. Like somebody at 10-2 teams are going to get in, and not having horrible losses, having 2 excellent losses really could be a decently compelling case for Notre Dame. All right.
Yeah.
Who's your bracket?
Again, it's still a little hard for me to like kind of separate the SEC teams. So some of this may be a bit nonsensical based off some of the schedules, but, number 1 still for me is Ohio State. I did put Miami back at 2. Last week I had Ohio State, Oregon 1-2. I'm rethinking like if Miami's actually undefeated, I don't think they'd be behind the Big Ten runner up. And I think Miami's going to end up being undefeated. So Ohio State 1, Miami 2, Oregon 3. Here's my change up. Texas Tech 4.
Ooh.
No buy for the SEC.
I love it.
Okay.
Oh, so mid. And then they just run the table. They fill in the rest of the bracket, but no buys.
Yeah. Because I think the Big Ten runner-up could be ahead of an unbeaten Big 12 champ. Because
I think that's true.
Because Miami's going to have the Notre Dame win outside of and the Florida win, whatever you think of that, and South Florida too. And
that Big Ten title game between Ohio State and Oregon, if it's a banger, we said, and they look like the two best teams, it's like, okay, they're both better than the Big 12 champ. That's not hard to fathom.
Yeah. Okay. So Texas Tech 4 as a Big 12 champ. 5 is A&M as my SEC champ. Alabama 6 as the SEC runner-up. Oklahoma 7. I took Oklahoma out. I put them back in because it sounds like Mateer is going to try to play this week in Red River. So I didn't know if he was going to miss a month or a week, and I guess the answer was a week. So I have Oklahoma back in at number 7. I have Indiana 8. I think that's like an 11-1 Indiana at number 8. 9 Ole Miss.
Okay.
10 Georgia.
Man. Okay.
11 Michigan.
Okay.
And then 12 South Florida.
Is this, by the way, just as a heads up for the games for us to pick on Friday, when we do usually 6 national picks, I do have South Florida, North Texas on Friday night as a game for us to pick. Are you cool with that?
I am cool with that. Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah, huge game for the American. That Michigan that you have in, that's a 10-2 Michigan with losses to Oklahoma and Ohio State?
Yes. Yeah. I think get a nice win this week against USC. I think the opportunity that Michigan has with a young quarterback like Bryce Underwood is like, even if it loses to Ohio State, to like just consistently like week after week after week, like start to look better. And like he more and more like looks like a star. And maybe it's not enough to beat the Buckeyes, but it's enough to make you think like that team belongs in the playoff at 10-2.
And like, again, step one, nobody is assuming that Ohio State is going to beat Michigan, because that would be a crazy thing to assume.
Yes.
So if in a lot of the scenarios that we're outlining here, if it actually is a scenario where Michigan is either 10-1 or 9-2 going into the Ohio State game, and Ohio State continues to look like it's looked so far, and Michigan wins, Michigan's in. They just beat the best team in the country.
Yeah, I think that's right.
But also the opportunity, like if Michigan is in that scenario, let's say they're a 9-2 Michigan team at that point. Now, I'd say they're 10-1. They don't lose again until then. Man, I wonder though, could they get it at 9-3? If you play with what looks like and has been all year the best team in the country, like that world where it's like, listen, man, I don't think anybody would have beaten Ohio State today. So Michigan lost to them, but so would have everybody else. 134 other teams would have lost to them too. So Michigan lost to them. I get it, but they look pretty good. Run game looked pretty good. Defense still getting after the passer a little bit. Bryce Underwood makes plays. Like, I like Michigan. Like, I do think they could go into the playoff committee room off of like a decently compelling Ohio State loss. And then this is where the strength of the best teams in the Big Ten should work in the Big Ten's favor. That like, yeah, Michigan lost to them, but guess what? Ohio State's awesome. Guess what? Oregon's awesome. Like, that's just the way it is. So I would be curious how much that could work in Michigan's favor. So you did not live your fear. How many SEC teams do you have?
5 SEC, 4 Big Ten.
Okay. We might be in like, so I still have like 4 Big Ten and 3 SEC. I'm the only person in the country with 3 SEC teams in, because I still have Georgia Tech in and that kind of thing. So from a Big Ten standpoint, should the Big Ten take that today? If they could get guaranteed 5 SEC, 4 Big Ten, take it to the house.
Yeah, I would take it. Yeah. I would cash out. Yeah.
I don't think Tony Petitti could be like, no, I'm holding out for 4 Big Ten, 3 SEC. So if you'll notice, I still don't have Bama in because we're going to pick Bama, Missouri this week too. I picked Bama to lose to Vanderbilt last week. They didn't. I'm just not getting on yet. And so I also don't have Missouri in right now, but like this, so we don't have Texas in, we don't have Georgia in, and I don't have Bama in. Like
I have
what?
Georgia in. I have Georgia.
You do have Georgia in. So you
Yeah.
think, what do you think about, so you have Georgia and Bama, but no Texas. I don't have any of the three.
Yeah.
Do you feel good about Georgia in, or do you feel like they'll probably get 5 and Georgia might be the 5th one?
Yeah, kind of. Because I'm not like I currently have Ole Miss ahead of Georgia, so like I guess that means I'm picking Ole Miss in the moment to win that game. They play in a couple weekends, but I don't know. Like, and then it's for Georgia. It's like Florida, Mississippi State, perhaps a down and on its way out. Texas, Charlotte, and Georgia Tech. Like, it's not an overly impressive 10-2, but I don't think like a 10-2 Georgia would get left out.
So I guess what I'm doing there is basically, to me, then there's a possibility that like Georgia Tech in the last week of the regular season becomes a play-in game.
Yeah.
And I have Georgia Tech in. And so like my Georgia Tech in all the way along the way has been Georgia Tech with a win over Georgia in.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's a scenario where even like Georgia Tech could then go to the ACC title game and lose to Miami, but they're still riding high. Like that's like a bid steal probably. Yeah. Where that's like the ACC 2 steals the SEC 5 spot with that head-to-head win. So okay. We just have to talk this out as we prepare for it. Again, like I'm still going to be probably a little too crazy about this stuff, but I remain committed to the idea that the SEC still might wind up beating each other a lot and proving how mid it is. And that maybe people will see the light and not just shrug their shoulders and put in 9-3 SEC teams because they don't know what else to do. So
it would go a long way in helping serve that agenda is if Texas wins Red River this weekend.
Yeah, so we need like, but I'm anticipating some of that. Like I'm not anticipating chaos with Ohio State and Oregon, and maybe not with Indiana. That if like Indiana just loses to Oregon and that's it, and they beat everybody else. But I still think it's reasonable, even if you're not anticipating SEC chaos, but to be curious about it, not surprised by it.
I will not be surprised by it, and I am rooting for it.
Yes. That's all we can do. All right. Yeah. Try rowback.com. Check out our Substack show on Wednesday. We'll be doing a Q&A with our Substack subscribers. So if you want to be a premium member over at Substack, you can sign up billanddougosu.substack.com. But then we have still obviously a lot of stuff coming here on the podcast feeds on the YouTube channel that will include our Ohio State, Illinois picks on Thursday. It will include national picks on Friday, and it will include, I think, at least one other thing this week, maybe more. We have a couple irons in the fire that we need to sort out, but we'll keep pumping the content here, and we appreciate you guys being part of it. So for now, that's our playoff bracket show that we drop every Tuesday. He's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was the Bill and Doug Show.